Hey friends, Blaine Bartell here. I want to talk to you a few minutes about where I see the future of the church going. We've been through a lot the last couple of years with COVID and going online, coming back, and talking to so many of my pastor friends, people not coming back that were going before, and all kinds of shuffling happening in the church. And I was really privileged. I guess it was about a year ago to be asked to sit in on a staff gathering with some friends of mine, Pastor Whit and Heather George at Church on the Move here in Tulsa. And they had a gentleman who is one of the, I'm not sure of his title, but he's one of the leadership team at Wheaton College, which is probably at least one of the most respected theological schools in the country. It's out of Chicago area. So his name is Ed Stetzer. And Ed is brilliant. He's a Christian theological, but more researcher nerd. The guy has got facts upon facts and studies and surveys, and he's what I would call, there's this passage in 1 Chronicles 12:32, and it talks about the Sons of Issachar. And it says that these men, these sons, had this divine ability, this ability that was God-given to understand the times. So they weren't prophets in that they were predicting the future, and they weren't really historians in that they were reevaluating the past, so to speak. They were people that understood where are we right now, and that's important. So I feel like this gentleman that spoke to the staff that day, Ed Stetzer, is like that. He's like a son of Issachar. He gets it. And he sees things, and he's just brilliant in his analysis of where, not just he says, but where the trending is in terms of where the church is going and how we can respond to that. So I want to put up a slide. This is something that he kind of began with. He said, basically, in terms of religious faith and practice in America right now, that we have four quadrants of faith in America right now. And so he defined them this way. He said 25% of Americans right now are what he would call convictional Christians. And these would be what we'd call the devoted believers, the strong, committed evangelicals. So, and even Catholics. These are believers that, love the Lord, go to church, give in the offering, serve. So that's 25% that have real conviction. And then there's the second group is Congregational Christians. So these are more nominal believers. So they're definitely at church, on big days, high days, if you will, Easter, Christmas, maybe, a couple times more a year. They might give occasionally. They might even, volunteer here and there, but they're not really super involved, and they're not a significant part of the church in America. And then there's what he called 25% cultural Christians. And these are basically dormant believers. These are people who are really Christians in name only. Maybe their father was and mom, maybe they were believers. Maybe they went to church, or grandparents did. Maybe they have friends that do. And if you asked them, are you a Christian? They would respond, yes. But do they go to church? And is their faith real and vibrant? No. They're just cultural. They're just kind of, they're Christians because they're Americans. And America started out as, quote, a Christian nation, right? So the last 25% are interesting. This is basically the non-Christians, maybe even some of them the anti-Christians. So those that do not name Christ, do not have faith in Christ, they might fall into 100 different categories in terms of what they actually believe. Maybe a different religion, maybe they're atheist, maybe they're agnostic, but 25% now are non-Christian in America. Now, so knowing that right now, Where is the church going to be? And that's the question that Ed asked all of us that were present in that meeting that day was, where is this going to take us? And where is the trending happening right now? Where do we go from here as a church? And what can we expect in the future? And I want to put up another slide. Look at this. He said right now, the nones or the non-Christians are the fastest growing group in America. Now, think about that. That 25% of non-Christians are the group that is growing the most or the fastest. And here's how they're growing. They're growing 1% a year, according to studies. So when you think about 1% a year, it really doesn't seem like that big a deal, right? It's like no big deal. 1% a year, we're cool with that. But I want you to see what happens if that continues. In 50 years, so if we fast forward to 2072, in 50 years, that group will actually have 75% of America. And the 25% of what we'd call convictional Christians will remain. Because here's what the studies show, is that the convictional Christian group, that 25% group, has not really changed over time. We have attrition. In other words, we have young people that maybe grew up in the church that leave, but then we also are seeing new people come to Christ. And so they kind of stay at the same level. Like that 25% each year, according to his research and the studies, doesn't really change. And yet we are seeing a change in the nones. So the nones or the non-Christians are the ones that are actually growing. So, 50 years is not that far away. I can tell you that. It may seem like a long ways for some of you that are, 20 or 25 or 30. You've only been around 25, 30 years, but I can promise you it will happen very, very quickly. And so that's where the trending is. Now, what that brings us to is, what do we do with that? How do we respond to that? How can we do better as the church? And I'm going to suggest something that I think is critical, and not just myself. I know with the pastors that I interact with and the men and women of faith that have been influential in my life, that this is and is becoming a common theme. Maybe the most important thing that we can do as the church. And it has nothing to do with Sunday mornings. It has nothing to do with our technology or our lights or our auditoriums. All of those things, as good as they are and as wonderful as those things can be. It has nothing to do with marketing, advertising, getting on more television stations, having more radio stations. Nothing to do with that. So let me tell you what it is. I believe, and I see a movement that is happening right now of discipleship. And I want to qualify that, because when you say that word, it just has so many connotations for people that have maybe grown up hearing that word. So discipleship for you may feel like, well, that was like an overbearing Christian in my life who tried to control my life, or an overbearing pastor that tried to control every part of my life. And so we've had negative connotations of that in the past. For some of you, it may be, well, that was, Sunday school. They called Sunday school before church discipleship. But let's really get back to what discipling and discipleship is. It is really stems from the ministry of Jesus, where Jesus invested in the lives of 12 men. And of course, we know beyond that, there were the 70, which included women and men and all these others that followed him and stayed close with him. But primarily, he invested in these 12 men. And he didn't have a course. We don't have any written curriculum that he developed. He was just mentoring, teaching, sharing parables. Watch me do this. Now I'm going to send you out and do it. It was just this personal investment of his life into men that he felt like God had put into his path. And he called them and he said, hey, come alongside me, follow me. Let's do this work together. But it was personal work, and it was in the trenches work. It was asking questions. It was answering questions. It was letting these men fail and helping them to get back up. And it was really a daily investment. I mean, when you think about the discipling that Jesus did, he spent every day, with these men, 8 hours a day, probably longer than that. And he did that for 3 years. And if you do the math on that, it's about 8,000 hours that he invested into 12 different men over the course of 3 years. That's discipleship. That's investing our lives in somebody for the gospel. And that's where we see radical change. That's where we see lives that are so changed and so impacted that they go on to change the world. And these 12, with the exception of Judas, would go on to be the leaders of this infantile movement called the church. And they would, most of them, be martyred for their faith willingly because they were so committed to this cause. And it was because of this incredible investment that Jesus made in the lives of these men. Now compare that to the discipling that we're doing for the most part in the church today. The average believer goes to church, and this would be a convictional Christian, okay, a part of our 25%. The average believer goes to church twice a month today. Actually goes and participates on a Sunday morning twice a month. I know some of you say, well, I go more than that. Great. Well, there's others who go less than that, but that's the average, is twice a month. And so if we have a believer going twice a month for an hour of worship, teaching, ministry, interaction with other believers for about an hour, that's what most church services are today. So let's just call it an hour. So twice a month, that's basically 12 hours, 24 hours a year. And we're going to, go 3 years. So we're going to basically, have less than 100 hours of Sunday morning worship, Bible teaching, or any kind of discipleship. And really and truly, that really isn't discipleship. We're not really going one-on-one. We're going, we're participating, we're singing, we're listening, but are we really getting in kind of deep down in the dirt and really talking about what's really going on in our lives and really asking the questions that need to be asked? So that doesn't mean that Sunday mornings aren't great. I love Sunday mornings. I love my church, love participating. But here's what I believe and what so many of my friends and leaders are coming to is we have to begin to invest individually in lives, whether that's our children, whether that's brothers and sisters in the church that we've got connected with. But I'm talking about meeting, gathering, having coffees, doing studies together in our home. In fact, one of the exciting trends that is happening in church planting right now is, especially on the East and West Coast, is church planters are actually planting, house churches where they're just meeting in their house and they're meeting around dinner, and then they have the Lord's Supper together, and then they share the scripture, and there's interaction and there's application. Like, how does that change the way I live? And how does that change the way the way I treat my wife or my children? How does that change the way I treat money in my career? So really getting in the trenches and saying, what does it really mean to be a Jesus follower? So I want to encourage you. That's where things are going. If you're a pastor, if you're a leader in the local church on some level, I would encourage you to put those practices into place. Give people opportunities for that in your community to engage in small group, to engage in one-on-one ministry. And I would encourage you as a Christian to say, who am I discipling and who am I being discipled by? Who am I investing in? Who am I intentionally meeting with to spend time with them to help them become more Jesus-like and allow what they're speaking into my life to help me become more Jesus-like. That has been the most life-changing thing for me in the last 10 years. I have been highly invested in being discipled and in discipling. And it is absolutely life-altering. And if you're a guy right now and, man, you're struggling with sexual sin, you're struggling with, pornography, or maybe you have a secret affair going on, or maybe you're about to, and you don't know what to do, I will invest in you. I will commit time to you. It's one of the reasons I do weekly coaching, where I meet with guys every single week for 8 weeks and then have an ongoing small group gathering that I invite you into to be a part of that's online every single week. I've been meeting with 12 to, right now we have 22 guys online every Thursday night. And it is just intense discipleship around being a father, being a husband, being a man of God, living into sexual purity, what that looks like. Listen, get somebody speaking into your life. If it isn't me in that area and you're struggling, find somebody. But if I can help you through our Katharos outreach with our 8-week discipleship curriculum for men, or personal coaching, or our online group, reach out. All you have to do is go to our website, blainebartell.com, and all the information is there. You'll see all the tabs at the top, and you can kind of move around and surf around and find out how we can serve you. But that is where we need to go, friends. Let's begin thinking about how can we invest in the lives of others in a real and significant way to help them become more like Jesus. And in the process of us doing that, here's the good news. We become more like Jesus. God bless you. Have a great day.